And welcome to our first panel, I think, right? And today we're going to talk about infrastructure as code. And I want to invite our excellent speakers to the panel. Sarah Sanders, she's a staff engineer at Capgemini. Welcome, Sarah. Please join us.
Thank you.
Daniel Ostrovsky is a senior principal engineer at Dell. Please welcome to the stage. And Jean Marcan is a senior developer advocate at Circle CI. Thank you all for joining. I hope you had a wonderful break. And if you have any question, feel free to ask. We will pass the mic afterwards. But first, I want to start by asking our excellent speaker, when you hear the word infra, the phrase infra as a code, what does it mean to you? Sarah, want to start?
Yeah. So I started my career in 1999 when there wasn't really much infra as code around. And when we used to do releases, the developers would compile a jar file on their machine. We would then FTP it across to the live box. We would take the system down. We'd transfer the file into the web application server and start it up again. When we wanted to do a database migration, we would take a backup of the database, delete it, create a new one. And I have deleted a production database with no backup before. So for me, infrastructure as code means avoiding human error, which means safety and security to me. So that's what I think of when I think of infra as code.
Thank you, Sarah. Jean,
Um,
any idea?
it's going to be hard to top what you just said, Sarah. I just want to echo that repeatability, automatability. I just coined that word. And yeah, just security by having something committable, reviewable.
Nice.
Resumability, reusability, ability to reuse it. Yeah. Great
Anything
English,
that ends with ability.
yeah, ability. Yeah, a lot of
Basically.
abilities there. Yeah. When I remember that you said that it's back in 1999, right? When you FTP upload SFTP, I did it 5 years ago in one of the companies. I was like, sure, guys, are we on the 2018? Maybe we need to move to do some CI/CD. Code infrastructure as a code. For me, as a developer, it's basically it gives me access to the area that I'm not very professional with. Okay, I mean, at least when 5 years ago. Basically, the infrastructure as a code allows not only for DevOps or professional guys who actually build infrastructure or manage infrastructure, but also allows to the other key holders to use it and to participate in the infrastructure. Okay, that's actually allows you to create your infrastructure the way that DevOps guys they're creating it, but developers, they are users. We as a developers, we become users of our infrastructure. Before that, it was like, okay, we developed that thing. Where it's going, what's going on, nobody knows, okay? But now, thanks with the different options of the infrastructure as a code, we able to use it and we able actually.
It really breaks down that wall between operations and developers, doesn't it? Because it's something that we should both be in control of and we can both understand theoretically.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, it opens a developer's mind to the operations mindset, doesn't it? And I think the different tools do that in varyingly successful ways. For me, if I tried to understand Puppet and Chef and configuration management, and I can't get my head around the way that that it's structured. But if I look at Terraform, which is a bit more declarative, I can read it and understand what it's doing. So in that way, it shows the different mindsets, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So at your companies, do you have a dedicated DevOps team that handles the infrastructure, or it is expected from all the developer at your team to know the basic of the infrastructure and to contribute to it, or it's a separation of control between those?
Oh, interesting. Yeah, we're a consultancy, so my team members are theoretically developers, but when they join a project, they'll often say, "Oh, you could do your DevOps better. You could do your CI/CD better," and they end up being DevOps engineers because they said, "Well, go on then, show us." So yeah, it's interesting because a lot of them, they enjoy it. They enjoy making the delivery process better, but it's not what they want to do. They want to be building applications, but they end up in that role because they want it to work, because it helps so much if you have a smooth delivery pipeline.
They feel the pain of the developers and
Yes.
everything. Yeah, they know what it means
Oh,
to build on.
Yeah, I mean, I work for a CI/CD vendor, so pretty much everyone's in the DevOps space, and yeah, we try to live and breathe what we're trying to promote in the world, I suppose. So everyone has access to the infra. We use kind of common tooling for it as well. So pretty much all about that.
I believe in sorry. A few years ago, we had this separation of front-end developers, back-end developers, DevOps developers, DBA developers, whatever developers. Back in 20, 30 years ago, everyone was webmasters. Okay, so everyone was the same title, regardless whatever you're dealing with. There was IT guys and webmasters. So now I believe it's everything coming back in the circles, and if you want to be if you're a developer, regardless what is your expertise, but you don't want to be developer, you want to be engineer, you want to be way above the mid-level of development, you have to be a full cycle. You still should have your expertise in your area to be professional with, but you have to be a full cycle. You need to understand whatever you developed, where it's running, how to deliver it, how to monitor it, how to fix it if needed, etc. Especially in our time, when the time to market is really, it's critical, and everything moves fast. And if I don't know, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, if your website is down, you're not going to lose a lot. You lose a little bit, but it's kind of okay. So website was down for 5, 10 minutes, 1 hour. But now if your website is down, it's going to come back to you. It's going to be all over the social. This website is down. They're not professional, and etc., etc., etc. So now the ability of the entire team, or anyone in the team, to understand what's going on and to act immediately and to solve the issue, and without knowing, understanding how things works behind it, without ability to access it, to see the DevOps part of it, the operational part, not able to create it or maintain it, use it. To be as a user, I think it's highly important in any company, in any size of the company.
Yeah, it's a really good point you make about the cycles, because I think it's now becoming so difficult to understand everything, because if you look at the CNCF landscape, if you've seen that diagram, the font is about size 4 by now to fit it all on the one page. It's becoming impossible for one person to keep all that complexity in their head. The cognitive overload is too great. And so we're ending up having a separate team again, this concept of a platform for developers, and the division is there again. So we're going to go back round, I presume. I don't think there's an answer to it, though, is there? Because everything on that landscape is an advantage. Every new concept of things that we can do better, if we're looking at the DevOps becomes DevSecOps. So we now have to do all of our vulnerability scanning, automatic updates. All these things are additions, but you couldn't not do them. So, yeah.
The way I see it is like they're also always becoming better and better and more advanced abstractions, because that's what we're dealing with, right? We're just dealing with, now you're configuring your clusters manually, or not manually, like you're directly configuring your clusters. Maybe like in a few years, like we can be thinking about 1 or 2 level higher, right? What that is, I don't know. Like we've obviously had application kind of services, but maybe that could be defined on a platform level as opposed to like internal platform level, as opposed to just the industry kind of top off the shelf kind of tooling level.
Yeah, it's
that's-
great to think about what the future of Infra as code might be, because I'm still amazed by the fact that our pipeline builds itself before it builds our project, and then it tears itself down when it finishes. There is no Jenkins sitting there. We have Concourse created on the fly when we check some code in. I still think that's magic. So what the next step is it the user thinks of something, AI writes the code and compiles it and spins it up, all Infra as code from thought to delivery. It's great to think about the future.
Sometimes it's scary to think about this. We can lose job.
So Daniel, where do you see the future of infrastructure as a code?
Where do I see future? I don't know. I don't like to look really far to away to the future. And I'll tell you why I don't know. For example, yesterday we had 2 talks. Okay, one was talking about how to move, and I'm doing like from really high level design description for these talks. But one of the talks was how to move from the YAMLs to CDKs. Okay, to use the CDK, and another one how to use from the code-driven development, the managing infrastructure to the Helm. That's actually YAMLs. Okay, how to move it. So the opposites. Okay, these 2 talks that say use code, use YAMLs. Okay, and who gonna win? I don't know. Definitely, I believe that sooner or later AI will come very useful. It's already pretty useful to make some basic configurations and definitions. Make mistakes, of course, we all know. If you know to use it, if you have enough expertise to build by yourself, so you can use AI can just help and make it a little bit faster for you in certain places. But really forward to see the future, I don't have an answer. I don't know.
Yeah, the AI thing is very interesting, isn't it? I heard a few years ago a really good example of Twitter using machine learning to optimize their new Graal VM installations. So it's quite a good use case for AI because there's a definite outcome. You want to minimize your compute power for a given workload. And there's a definite set of inputs. There's only so many JVM arguments that you can add. So they just let AI configure the JVM arguments and practice the loop, which one is best. And so they have an outcome, which is the most performant. They don't know why. But it's, I think, Infra as code is quite a good space, possibly also a dangerous space, but for machine learning application, yeah.
What I'm afraid of is that when AI will be able to configure the infrastructure, it will configure the infrastructure for itself and use it to be more powerful. And then Terminator will come to kill something.
Any question from the audience?
We just don't see you, so
Yeah.
say hi. No, say hi if you want to ask a question. Anyone?
No? You have great experts over here. How many of you are DevOps in your daily jobs? Oh,
One,
we
two,
have a
three.
few in the crowd from what I can see. Sure.
Yeah.
Wait a second. I will pass you the mic.
Hi. So I guess with all the abstraction that's coming, we are expecting both developers to know now DevOps, and DevOps we expect to know now also the Sec. So what should be the right path for new guys who try to join the community each of their either developers or DevOps from what to start and how to expand.
I can answer you about the developers. Start from basic, always. I'll tell you why. It's you know it's a hurting point of mine. When think about this, in the world of the developments, okay, I'm coming from the client-side development, front-end development, Angular, React, all this stuff. I see a lot of developers who says, I'm the senior, I have the 5 years experience, 5 years development in Angular. And I ask him, have you ever developed in JavaScript? No, never, just only Angular. Like, so you're not expertise, you're not senior, you're not developer. You're user for the Angular, maybe, but you're not a developer. And basically, if you will go back in the time, the 10 years, 15 years ago, when we didn't have any plurals and code, how's called all this courses, online services.
Coursera.
Coursera, yeah, Coursera was the first one, if
yeah.
I remember right. Yeah. If you want to study, if you want to learn something, you buy the book, okay? Get the book. I remember the last book that I was reading. It was called Fusion 4.5. Anyone remember what is this? Okay. Or you taking the courses, okay? And basically on the courses, offline courses, you study everything from the beginning, from the scratch, okay? If it's JavaScript, client developer, whatever, it's you starting with what is variable and going forward to the more complicated things. So if you want to get into the community, if you want to get into the development, start with the basics, okay? Because now if you're going to learn something, I want to be front-end developer, you're going to get the course for the Angular or React or Vue.js, and you're going to use the semantics of these languages, but you're not going to know how to develop, okay? Same with the DevOps. If you will start course with the DevOps, I want to build the infrastructure for the machine learning, okay? Most of the courses will teach you how to use AWS console or Google console, okay? So the UI, how to click on the buttons and build everything together. But to understand actually why you need it, what instance is, okay, how it works, why you need the VPC, why it should be, what is the security around it. Maybe I'm now saying some buzzwords that I have no idea what is this. No, but I don't know. So anyway, why you have the storage service separately and instance separately, when you have the storage on the instance, also you have the hard driver, and why when you need to use another one, etc., etc., etc. And when you start learning it, it's start from the CLI, okay? Also, it's highly important because this is the basic. This is the basic. And basic, it's the most important part in your expertise, okay?
Yeah, it's understanding the problems, isn't it, that you're trying to solve, because they probably don't change. The solutions, the ways that we change them, the ways that we solve them change, but the underlying problems of, you know, I want to get my data from here to here securely. I want to be able to analyze it and pull out some insights. And, you know, the problems that we're trying to solve are probably the same. And a lot of the other things that come and go, like low code, no code, sort of reared its head recently. And I was talking to a colleague and he said, oh, I remember last time, 1983 was the last time that low code was fashionable. You know, and virtual reality as well, that comes and goes. So it might seem that it's a constantly expanding pool of things to learn, but in fact, if you've got the basics and an understanding of the problems, everything else comes and goes.
Oh, it's cool. You just remind me, the low code or no code, it's a front page application that was by Microsoft, right? Drag and drop that was built in the, wow. Again, and even here we have the circle of the history.
I want to add something, like with regards to learning and keeping on top of new technologies. I think there is an industry shift, an industry/organizational shift that needs to happen, and we need to embrace something that was quite common back in hundreds of years, right? Like when people were learning to master new skills, what they would do, they would be called journeymen, right? They would go between cities, between different workshop. Let's say you're learning how to be like a blacksmith, and you would go and journey and learn and study under different masters, and that's how you became a master yourself. And like, I think organizations need to embrace that mentality, because reality is most of you are probably not fully office based anymore, I imagine. So we're more and more remote, we're more and more virtual. So you cannot drop these eventual occurrences where you just kind of run into someone working on the ML team, for example, or working on the infra team, and you can't have these random conversations. But we could, and we should, as organizations, encourage internal mobility to basically say, hey, you wanna try out how to do infrastructure? You've done mobile applications. That's fine. We can train you. Like, it's going to be a lot cheaper than recruiting someone at the end of the day. And that's how you expose people to new types of business, new angles of looking at business problems, of looking at just new industry trends, etc. I think that's the fundamental thing that we need to realize and adopt.
That is a great idea. It also keeps the developers refreshed. They keep learning new things. They feel seen by the company. They don't move away from the company to search for new adventures, new roles. And it's great for mobility inside of the work. Like, somebody can choose to become a DevOps engineer instead of a front-end engineer. And it's really like a great initiative to start at companies. So you can suggest it at your companies after this conference. It will be great for everyone. Any other questions from the audience? Scream if you... Do you have any question from home, like from the online? No? Okay.
Well, in that case, I could bring up the sensitive topic of testing infrastructure as code. I come from a development background, and I would not be allowed to write that many lines of code without having very high code coverage. But our platform engineering team can get away with murder. So maybe it would be a good question for you. How do you advocate from Circle CI how you can test your infra as code?
Absolutely. Infrastructure as code is executed on pipelines, and obviously pipelines can do what I do showcase in my personal workshops that I do. Whenever we're doing, for example, Terraform, I try to do some kind of static code analysis on these things. It usually comes down to like a security scan, but ultimately that's a very easy thing to do. Anything can just check your scripts, your Terraform, for example, if they're doing what they're supposed to do. And I would definitely just recommend you start there. And the other part is essentially you're going to be testing it through your consumers, and that's the reality, and we need to like embrace it and just understand it.
Yeah, because it's a very different, well, all the concepts are different really. When I write code, the idea is that my same compiled code will be deployed in every different environment. But with infrastructure as code, so much of that environment has to change, doesn't it?
Yeah, but maybe I'm misunderstanding here something, but let's separate out the let's say the Terraform and a new plugin for Terraform that I'm developing that allows me to, easy way to deploy static websites. Okay, for example, there's like 20 plugins like this out there. Now this code definitely have to be tested because it's just actually the code. Okay, but I'm as a user of this plugin, it's not something that I need to do. I'm not going to test plugin that I'm using from outside. Okay, what I'm using for me as a user of Terraform. For me, infrastructure as a code is actually the files, the Terraform files. Okay, now the testing the Terraform files is actually running it. Okay, or static code analysis maybe can be implemented. I don't know if there is static code analysis for Terraform 5. And same for the YAML files for Kubernetes, Helm, and configuration and all this stuff. It's not something that can be tested, but only executed and then tested whatever you got. Yesterday, by the way, we had I was hosted a really great talk about it, the chaos of containers. Okay, when from AWS they talked about if you remember, in 2015 and then 2018, there was downtime on AWS in some regions. Okay, and he was talking about that basically how you test and the importance of testing your environment when it's up and running and trying to kill it from from everywhere, from all possible ways. Okay, by deploying something wrong, by killing one of the service and see if not everything is falling down, trying to randomly kill some services, some Dockers, some images, some posts, that put them down and see what's going on. Okay, will it repair or not? Will work it or not, etc. Okay, will your application will scale up or not? So I believe that this is one of the parts that what you're saying is that it have to be run anyway. It should be somewhere on the environment, okay? Because this is your only way you can actually test it. But what you need is actually, you really need to test it, because I never seen it. I worked in many companies and I never seen that someone testing actually the environment, not the application that's running on the environment, but the environment itself. What's going on if I will kill 10 pods out of my Kubernetes?
I remember hearing for the first time about Chaos Monkey, the library that does that. It just goes and kills stuff in your environment. It's just such a cool idea, but I don't know many companies brave enough to try it.
Yeah, basically what you need to do is you need to build, the clone of your environment, pull some, 50, 10%, 20% of your traffic into this environment, and give it to Monkey. You can do it on the real production too if you're brave enough. No, basically, this was one of the questions of the talk. Okay, why if it can be done on production? He said yes, but you need to be very proficient of how you running the tests on the other environments, and only then you can go to production. Get experience, know what you're doing, know how you recover immediately, etc., etc., etc. Then run on production. Why not? I believe that production have to be tested always. I believe that before they started this test on the production, okay, they did it several years on the other environments. They get if they get the all experience, and it was ready for any use case. So I don't believe that they're okay, we get a new data center, let's kill it and see if we're going to survive.
My testing example is actually much more mundane. I see the point that you're making, that you don't need to test Terraform. That's already been done. But if I were to be defining my environments and I want to make sure that my production environment is listening to my production queues, for example, so I've written that code myself with some configuration that gets pulled in. How can I be sure? What kind of tests can I run to prove that my production environment is talking to my production queues? I mean, there's a sort of smoke test, isn't there? Example of you have some safe data that you can pass through your production system without accidentally purchasing stuff. Is there anything further we can do in that space to make sure that the configuration side of our infra as code is correctly aligned?
It's more like application-wise, maybe test like cross-platform end-to-end test.
Yeah.
For example, like really flow. For example, you know, for the e-commerce is widely suggested to run real end-to-end test.
They have
from-
special credit cards, don't they? And if
Yeah.
you put in that number, it will work, but it won't actually
Yeah,
cost you.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have the purchase, you have the entire flow, everything, and you need to understand that everything is coming up to the actual delivery sometimes. But never mind, it's too far. But yeah, you actually there is some tests starting from including the emails, including the cross applications, not only on the web but also when I put in the basket into the web and then I'm continue in the mobile and many other use cases. Okay, so it's not only the simple flow. It's but if you want to see that your product is up and running and everything is working, you need to actually I think run the real smoky tests, real life flows, user flows on your environment, on the production, and see if it works or not, and with the whole expectation in the center. Basically, it will check everything: databases, if it's saved, if it's not saved, the accesses. What it's not going to say if it's like security-wise. Are you secured or you're not secured? This is the additional tests that have to be done. Yeah, but there's a lot of things that we can test. I believe there's always we'll forget something to test.
Yeah.
There will be something not tested always.
That's what keeps us in our jobs. That was a joke.
Partly. There is always a truth inside of a joke. So, any questions? Great. Sure.
Online questions?
As those are here. Okay. Will infrastructure as code means... do you have like this...
You can look at the screen.
Wow. Okay. Pick one. Just joking. Which transition is easier? Developer to DevOps or sys platform admin to DevOps? Jan, want to take this?
Yeah, I just need to read it again.
It's a second from
Yeah.
the bottom.
Anybody in the audience did this transition from front-end engineer to DevOps?
I can say that I was really close to become a DevOps on the previous work. Okay, I did a lot of DevOps work. I'm not quite sure. Like I have experience with the DevOps, okay, but I'm not going to take responsibility for the production environment. Okay, test environment, build something, and send all the configuration to someone smarter than me to check that I accidentally didn't open any port or whatever access to the world. That's something that I can do, but to say that I'm ready to be responsible for the DevOps for the production, no. It's a different state of mind. But again, as I said, to be a full cycle, to understand what's going on and to use the DevOps, yes, it's highly important.
I think it's different mind shifts, because I think dev to DevOps, you have to learn different actual skills.
Yeah, it's a different
But
skills.
I think platform engineering to DevOps, when we have let platform engineers build our platforms, it's more the agile mindset that they don't know about. So they might hide behind a ticketing system, so you don't ever have to speak to each other. But all the concepts that we as developers have been working very hard at to break down the barrier between the developers and the business. So making sure that things are very closely tied with a tight, 2-week sprint type loops, with a constant feedback, with the, product owner sitting in our teams. That is seldom thought of when you're trying to teach platform engineers to be DevOps. You go, oh, this is how you code, and they'll be like, well, that's easy. But that whole developer as a customer, I think, isn't really pushed enough when people are transferring from platform engineering to DevOps. it's quite difficult to think of a developer as a customer.
Working for a vendor, that's basically what I see anyway. Like, developer is a customer, is the user. But yeah, it's just like taking the product mindset, and anyone who's ever worked on a product team who had actual customers and users and looked at what are they doing with your products, features, whatever you're building. You just take that and apply it to people who can speak code. So in theory, it's easy. It's just keeping that in mind that needs to be constantly enforced. And that's all about DevOps, right? It's breaking those kind of boundaries and silos and getting more people in the room.
So do you have any experience or success story using TF-CDK, or do you see the industry moving to SDK? The closest question to you.
What's TF-CDK?
The top questions is the highly voted questions. The people voting on the questions.
Thank you.
But yeah, let's start with this one.
Yeah.
Do you have the experience as TF-CDK is a Terraform CDK?
We also learned something new today.
Yeah, I had this experience once. It was a long time ago, a little bit on some small project, so I can say I don't have experience, I just have familiar with this, but not more than that. And do you see the industry moving to SDK?
I don't see it. I think we'll go back to being more a separation between devs and platform engineers, but platform engineers will be more agile. So therefore, there isn't that need to make infra as code more accessible to developers, because there'll be too much going on for one mind. So there'll need to be more than one role, and the SDK won't be so necessary. But yeah.
I believe I agree with you, but still I think there's always will be niche for.
Yeah, there'll always be a really
always
good
will be a
use
niche for the-
case.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a use case.
So we have a question about Terraform. Is Terraform the only tool for infrastructure as a code, and why it is so popular?
It's not the only one. It's just the most popular ones. I think the popularity stems down to just the fact that you can work with any cloud provider. It has this awesome network and marketplace of plugins and everything that you mentioned. That just covers pretty much any use case. You learn that once, you learn how to use it, and then you apply that pretty much everywhere, pun intended. Pulumi, obviously, that's a good mention. That's like TF-CDK, right? So configuration is infrastructure as kind of in a programming manner, yeah. So again, that's another one. And CloudFormation, if anyone likes using CloudFormation, that's your answer.
Yeah, but basically it's not the one. It's similar like for the containers. Who can name me 5 options for containers without giving the Docker name? There's many. Okay, there's like about 15 different options. There's about more than 10 different options to switch from Kubernetes. Okay, so why we don't know about them? Because the community don't like it. I don't know. Because there's some adoptions. Because there's big companies behind some of it. Because many reasons. Okay, but I remember when Docker came out with some subscription and licensing issue, they trying to change something. I remember in the big company we started to research everything, like how we're moving out from the Dockers, how we need to stop using the Docker. So I realized that Dockers it's just one of the tools. It's not the tool, and not the best one, by the way, but the most widely adopted. Yes.
Cool. So we don't have time for more questions, but to sum everything up, I think that the infrastructure as a code will go and integrated with the advances of the AI. We're going to see new trends coming up, and who knows what the future will bring. Hopefully good stuff. And if you want to get into DevOps and stuff like that, you should also expand your knowledge, suggest your company to do some training with teams of infrastructure, as they said. And we hope you enjoyed it. I want to thank our speakers and our panel very much. And for you also, thank you for attending, especially after the lunch. It's a hard time. And
There is
thank
a reason
you.
why no questions. They all sleep.
Yeah, they're sleepy from the lunch break.
Thank
So
you.
thank you very much for attending. I hope you learned something new.